Listen carefully. Heaven has pressed pause on your life not to punish you, but to protect you. Every delay, every closed door, every unanswered prayer was divine strategy. You have cried, God, why not yet? And heaven has whispered, because if I released you then, it would have destroyed what I am building within you. The silence was not absence, it was protection. You were hidden because revelation too early can become devastation. Heaven covered you, not because you were weak, but because your light was being refined. You were not ready for exposure. You were being prepared for endurance. What others call delay, heaven calls design. There is a reason your name wasn't called when others were chosen. There is a reason doors shut when you were standing right in front of them. You were not rejected, you were preserved. You were not overlooked, you were reserved. You see, there are moments when God hides his most powerful vessels in seasons of stillness. It is in the silence that the strongest roots grow. In obscurity, your faith deepened, your discernment sharpened, your endurance strengthened. You thought nothing was happening, but in the unseen, heaven was equipping you. The waiting room of God is never empty, it is full of purpose, though hidden from sight. It was written in the scroll of Isaiah chapter 60, verse 22. When the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen. These words were not written as comfort alone, they are divine confirmation. When the time is right, not when you think it's right, but when heaven knows it's right, the shift will be unstoppable. The delay was not a punishment, it was divine timing. You have been walking through a divine holding pattern where heaven was aligning resources, hearts, and timing for your rise. Every unanswered prayer was not a no, but a not yet, chosen one. Do you understand the very stillness that made you doubt yourself was the same stillness heaven used to strengthen you? There were things God could not reveal until you learned stillness. There were promises he could not release until you learned trust. Many doors were withheld, not because you were unworthy, but because you were being made ready for the weight of what's coming. You wanted to be seen, but heaven needed you to be sealed. You wanted speed, but heaven was building stability. You wanted recognition, but heaven wanted revelation. The delay was forming depth, while others were running ahead. You were being built underground like a seed. Remember, the seeds that grow slowly build roots that cannot be uprooted. Your hiddenness was not wasted, it was sacred. There were moments you looked at others rising faster and wondered, did God forget me? But he didn't. He hid you from premature battles. Some platforms you envied would have crushed your spirit. Some opportunities you prayed for were wrapped in spiritual traps. Heaven saw what you couldn't see. What you thought was rejection was actually redirection. What you thought was denial was actually divine detour. Chosen one. Heaven's pause is not heaven's silence. While you waited, heaven was watching. Every tear you shed became a testimony being written in the unseen. Every time you chose faith over frustration, you proved you were trustworthy. Heaven does not release power to the impatient, it entrusts it to those who can wait. You have been trained in the art of stillness, and that stillness is now your strength. You are entering a moment where the delay begins to make sense. Soon, everything you lost in the waiting will return, multiplied. Heaven did not forget your name, it reserved it for the right announcement. When the trumpet sounds for your unveiling, every moment of waiting will be redeemed in divine acceleration. But do not rush it. The same God who hid you will be the one who reveals you at the appointed time. So, stand firm. The pause is almost over. Your season of stillness is about to turn into a season of sudden movement. Trust the divine schedule. Heaven has never been late, only precise. Every delay has been protection. Every silence has been shaping. Every hidden day has been holy. When the time is right, you will rise and nothing will be able to stop it. If this message resonates in your spirit, acknowledge it. Like, share, and comment 777 below as a prophetic declaration that your delay was divine protection. And subscribe, stay connected to the flow of heaven's voice that reminds you who you are chosen, covered, and prepared. You step into the wilderness, and at first it feels like punishment. Everything that once felt alive grows quiet. Familiar voices fade. The paths that once led somewhere now seem endless and uncertain. Yet this chosen one is the wilderness of divine refinement, the place where heaven strips away distractions so that only truth remains. The wilderness is not the absence of God. It is where his voice becomes unmistakably clear. You have been asking, why the silence? Why the stillness? But silence is not God's disinterest, it is his invitation. When God wants to speak loudly, he often chooses the language of quiet. The wilderness is the space between the calling and the crowning, the promise and the fulfillment. It is where character is forged and dependence is born. You cannot skip it. Every chosen vessel must pass through this narrow corridor of isolation before entering purpose. Here, comfort leaves so that conviction can grow. The wilderness exposes everything that cannot go with you into the next season. It confronts pride, ambition, and impatience. You start to realize that what you thought was loss is actually pruning. The dreams that fell apart were not failures, they were foundations being reset. The wilderness tears away everything that was built on the wrong motives. God loves you too much to let you carry old versions of yourself into new seasons. In this desert, your senses shift. You begin to discern differently. You start hearing heaven in whispers instead of shouts. The hunger that drives you now is not for applause, but for alignment. You are learning that obedience in obscurity carries more power than success in public. In this sacred solitude, you begin to see that your value was never in visibility, but in your connection to God's presence. The wilderness can feel cruel. It starves your comfort but feeds your faith. It dismantles your control so that dependence can grow. When everything around you dries up, you are forced to drink only from heaven. This is how prophets are born, how warriors are shaped, how chosen ones are refined. You thought God had abandoned you, but he was actually teaching you to walk by faith, not by sight. As you wander, you start to notice subtle miracles, the small provisions that arrive just when you need them. The manna moments, the unexpected encouragement, the strength that appears when you are certain you have none left. These are signs that heaven has not left you. It is walking with you. God never leads his children into wildernesses he does not intend to walk them through. Every dry place has an exit written in divine ink. The Spirit spoke through the psalmist in the book of Psalms. Chapter 63, verse 1. O God, you are my God. Earnestly I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you. In a dry and weary land where there is no water. This is the cry of every chosen one in the wilderness. You begin to crave God more deeply, not because you are comfortable, but because you are desperate. In the wilderness, you find him not in the storm, but in the stillness. He becomes your only constant, your only source, your only answer. That is why the wilderness is sacred. It strips away illusion until only truth remains. Many never survive this season because they mistake hiddenness for abandonment. But those who endure, those who stay faithful in the silence, are transformed from wanderers into warriors. You are being remade. The same God who led you here will not leave you here. This barren ground will one day bloom. And when it does, You will recognize its beauty was birthed through your surrender. The wilderness season teaches you the rhythm of heaven, how to move when He moves, how to wait when He waits. You begin to understand that delays are not punishments. They are calibrations. Every step, every detour, every dry day is part of a divine map. When the time comes, you will realize that the wilderness was not a setback. It was a setup. You were being prepared in silence to speak with authority later. You will come out of this wilderness carrying something others cannot: counterfeit wisdom that can only be learned through isolation, power that can only be trusted through obedience, and peace that cannot be shaken by circumstance. This is why heaven hid you here, so that when the time of revealing comes, you will not be moved by applause or criticism. The wilderness is not forever. It is a passage, not a prison. One day soon, you will step out of it with the fire of one who has seen God in the quiet places. You will no longer chase validation, because the voice that called you in the desert will be louder than any praise that follows. When doors refused to open, you thought heaven had forgotten you. You knocked, you prayed, you fasted, and still the answer was silence. But what if those closed doors were not rejection, but divine redirection? What if the no you heard was God's protection against something you could not yet perceive every time a door stayed shut? It was not because you lacked faith, it was because heaven saw further ahead than you could. There were places you wanted to enter that would have sabotaged your destiny. People you begged to stay connected to who would have drained your purpose. Opportunities that sparkled like gold but carried hidden traps. The delay was not a denial, it was a defense. God was not withholding good things from you. He was keeping the wrong things from touching you. In your tears, you cried. Why me? And heaven whispered, because I love you too much to let you walk into that. You see, the doors you thought you needed were too small for what God planned. The rooms you tried to fit into could not contain the magnitude of your assignment. That's why they stayed locked. The closed door was mercy. Every no became a wall that redirected your path toward purpose. You were being steered, not stopped. What felt like delay was heaven adjusting your route to avoid collision. Sometimes divine protection looks like frustration. You begged for the promotion, the relationship, the breakthrough, and when it didn't come, you questioned your worth. But heaven was not rejecting you, it was reserving you. The delay was divine filtration. Not everything labeled as opportunity was meant to carry your anointing. Some doors were crafted by the enemy, designed to look perfect but built to collapse the moment you stepped through. The Spirit spoke through the apostle in his second letter to the Corinthians. Chapter 4, verse 17. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. Do you see it now? The troubles were not random, they were working for you. The silence was sacred, the shut doors necessary. Heaven knew what you didn't, that you needed to grow roots before rising. Every rejection built resilience. Every unanswered prayer increased discernment. You were being taught to distinguish between what glitters and what is truly gold. In time, you'll thank God for every door that refused to open. You'll realize those moments protected your anointing from exploitation. You were hidden not because you were unworthy, but because your gift was still being guarded. There are seasons when God must keep his chosen ones behind divine doors, not to imprison them, but to prepare them. When the appointed time arrives, the right door will swing open without you forcing it. And here's the truth, when that moment comes, you won't need to beg to be seen. Heaven will announce you. The same God who shut the wrong doors will personally unlock the right one. What once felt delayed will suddenly make sense. It had to be timed, because if it came earlier, it would have broken you. Divine protection always feels like resistance before it feels like revelation. So, pause right here. Breathe. Look back and think of every closed door, every painful no, every missed chance. What if you could see the danger that heaven blocked? What if those delays saved your destiny you were not losing? You were being led. You were not rejected, you were rerouted. You were being hidden from harm so you could be revealed in health. Heaven was editing your story for longevity. Now, chosen one. Declare it in faith. Comment doors aligned below. Not as routine, but as revelation. Because this is what heaven is saying: the right door is aligning with your obedience. The delay has finished its purpose. And soon, every divine lock will click open, not through force, but through timing. What was closed yesterday will make sense tomorrow. You have been prepared, purified, and positioned. The doors that once resisted you will now recognize you. The closed doors were never your end. They were your escort to the right beginning. Every closed path redirected your steps toward destiny's highway. The pain of waiting birthed precision in your spirit. You now walk with divine awareness, aligned, anchored, and absolutely untouchable by distraction. Every no was heaven's way of saying, not there, not yet. You were being shaped for greater responsibility, refined to handle what others fumbled. This delay sharpened your discernment. It taught you divine patience. Every delay protected divine promise. You were never forgotten, only preserved. Heaven was building your foundation in secret so that when the unveiling comes, you will not crumble under the weight of glory. The hidden training ground, this is where heaven does its deepest work. The world may not have seen your progress, but God was shaping you with invisible hands. Every trial, every heartbreak, every disappointment was a tool in His workshop. You thought the waiting season was idle time, but it was spiritual preparation. While others were racing ahead, you were being taught to move differently, to move with wisdom, not impulse, with revelation, not reaction. The hidden place is where the foundations of great callings are forged. Public victories are born in private battles. God knew that if He exposed you too early, the weight of visibility would crush what was still developing inside you. So He took you aside. He separated you not to isolate you, but to instruct you. The hidden place was not punishment. It was mentorship from heaven itself. There, in silence, you learned the discipline of stillness. You learned to recognize God's whisper in chaos, to find peace in storms, to pray without proof. Every unseen moment strengthened your spiritual muscles. When no one applauded, you learned to move for purpose rather than praise. The lessons of obscurity are the armor of the chosen: protection against pride, protection against distraction, protection against self-destruction. The Spirit reminds us through the writings of David in the book of Psalms, chapter 144, verse 1. Blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. Those words are more than poetry. They describe your season of hidden training. God was teaching you how to fight spiritual battles that can't be won with talent, only with trust. The delay was your boot camp. Every tear became a weapon. Every rejection turned into revelation. You were not standing still, you were being equipped. You have walked through classrooms others never enter: loneliness, silence, loss. Each one taught you something vital. Loneliness taught you how to hear God without noise. Silence taught you that answers don't always arrive in thunder, but sometimes in peace. Loss taught you that what leaves is often replaced by something far greater. The hidden place was where your anointing matured from emotion to endurance. In the unseen, You learned the rhythm of obedience, how to move when heaven says move, and how to wait when heaven says wait. It's not easy to submit when you don't understand, but submission is what separates the chosen from the called. You were learning the language of surrender, one test at a time, when you thought nothing was happening. Heaven was watching your consistency. You were passing invisible exams. This is the paradox of the chosen life. The more valuable your calling, the longer the preparation. Diamonds stay hidden under pressure longer than stones that crack easily. So when heaven hid you, it was because you were precious, not forgotten. It was protection against premature exposure, because what is revealed too soon is often ruined too soon. The hidden training ground is also where humility is birthed. You begin to realize that success without surrender leads to spiritual decay. You stop striving to be seen and start longing to be ready. You start valuing obedience over opportunity. This is how warriors of light are formed, not in crowds, but in caves. And when the time comes, everything you learned in silence will speak louder than words. The patience forged in stillness will sustain you where applause cannot. The humility born in isolation will keep you steady when success comes. You will walk with quiet confidence because you know what it costs to stand in the light. So, when you look back on the hidden years, don't resent them. Resent. They were the reason you are unshakable now. Every test was training. Every delay was discipline. Every unseen day was a page in your preparation. Heaven did not waste a single moment. You were trained in obscurity so that when the world finally sees you, you'll carry heaven's authority, not arrogance, not performance, but power that cannot be faked. You are the product of divine craftsmanship, shaped in silence for a mission that will echo in eternity. The lessons carved in darkness will guide your steps in light. Every scar became scripture written on your soul, proof that endurance builds authenticity and that faith forged in fire cannot easily be shaken. You now understand why you were hidden. Heaven was perfecting your foundation, not punishing your pace. What was once confusion has become clarity. Delay was the language of divine love preparing you for revelation. Every secret season now makes sense. The hidden training ground was never about isolation, it was transformation. You were not waiting, you were being woven into purpose, refined to carry light without losing humility. There are watchers in the shadows, those unseen witnesses who observe your journey. Some are angelic, guarding your steps. Others are adversarial, waiting for your collapse. You have walked through nights where you felt eyes on you, yet no one stood beside you. Heaven and hell have both studied your endurance. Every moment of quiet obedience has echoed in eternity. You were never walking alone. You were walking watched. In every hidden season, there are two audiences, one hoping for your downfall and another preparing your crown. The angels took note of your faith when you prayed through the pain. The darkness watched you refuse compromise when it would have been easy to surrender. Every tear, every whispered prayer, every act of forgiveness became evidence that heaven had chosen correctly. You may have felt invisible, but your persistence was seen by the unseen realm. There is a weight to being chosen. You are not only living your story, you are proving heaven's investment true. You are the testimony the enemy cannot erase. That's why your attacks felt personal. The shadows that surrounded you were not random, they were resistance to your rising. Darkness recognizes destiny before people do. It saw the mark on you, the seal of heaven's favor, and tried to crush you before your unveiling. But here you stand, still breathing, still believing, still burning with divine purpose. The same eyes that watched for your fall are now witnessing your resilience. Heaven applauds where earth once ignored. The watchers cannot touch what God protects. Every snare meant to stop you has become the stage that displays your survival. The voice of God thundered in the book of Job, chapter 1, verse 10. Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands. That hedge surrounds you even when you can't see it. The delay, the silence, the setbacks, they were all part of that hedge. God's protection often looks like limitation. He restricted access to your life to preserve your anointing. You thought you were being excluded, but you were being enclosed. Heaven was building walls not to imprison you, but to shield you. Think of yourself as a lamp covered by a hand. The covering doesn't extinguish the flame, it preserves it from the wind until it's time to shine fully. That's what God has done with you. The watchers in the shadows have seen your flame flicker, but never die. And now, as the season shifts, that covering hand is slowly lifting. Your light is ready to touch the world. As this message reaches you, take a breath and recognize something. This connection between us, this voice speaking to your spirit, is part of that unveiling. It's heaven's way of reminding you that you are not forgotten, and you are not walking this road alone. If these words have stirred your heart, I invite you gently to let that gratitude flow. Sometimes the simplest act carries eternal weight. Press like if your heart whispers yes. Share this message so another hidden light can awaken, and subscribe if you want to keep walking this journey together. And if your spirit feels moved to go deeper, to add your oil to the flame, you can choose to donate. Think of it not as giving away, but as thap them motngonen gua gem, or dropping a single drop of water into a river of light. Every gesture, every contribution, no matter how small, helps this light reach another soul waiting in silence. This is not a demand, it's an offering of choice. Just as God never forces purpose, this space never forces giving. You give not because you must, but because something within you recognizes that light multiplies when shared. When you sow into light, you become part of its glow. So whether you press like, share the word, subscribe to stay near, or give from the quiet place of your heart, you are part of this movement of hope. You help keep this flame alive, reaching through digital wildernesses to touch the next chosen one waiting for their own awakening. When heaven sees generosity born from love, it multiplies it. What you release in sincerity returns as strength. Your small act becomes a spark in eternity. The watchers may have seen your struggle, but now they will see your strength. You were never meant to fade in the dark. You were meant to rise and shine. Your endurance has become your evidence, and your open hand extended in faith will become someone else's answered prayer. You were wrapped in the cocoon of isolation, and at times it felt unbearable. Everything slowed, conversations faded. The world seemed to keep moving while you stood still in divine stillness. You wondered if you had been forgotten. But what you didn't realize was that heaven was wrapping you not in rejection, but in transformation. Like a caterpillar hidden in darkness, you were being reshaped for flight. The cocoon is not a prison, it's a process. In that sacred stillness, your form changes. The parts of you that once crawled on the ground begin to dissolve so new wings can form. You could not skip this stage, it was necessary. The cocoon protects the unfinished from premature exposure. Inside it, God softens the old and constructs the new. You were not being confined, you were being completed. The silence of the cocoon is loud to the soul. It presses, it isolates, it demands surrender. Every distraction is stripped away so that only the essential remains your faith. You learn to hear the language of stillness. You start noticing small whispers in the quiet, soft instructions from heaven that shape your heart. The stillness that once frightened you becomes the sacred ground where you finally meet God without interference. The Spirit reminds us in the book of Isaiah, chapter 30, verse 15. In quietness and trust is your strength. Those words hold the secret of your survival. The world values noise, motion, and visibility, but heaven works in silence, shaping destiny behind closed curtains. When God hides you, He is protecting the blueprint of your purpose. Every moment you felt invisible, you were actually being secured. You were learning the rhythm of heaven, slow, deliberate, eternal. You see, the cocoon is not punishment for ambition, it is preparation for altitude. The higher you are meant to fly, the longer your wings require formation. Many lose heart because they confuse concealment with cancellation. But you, chosen one, must understand what God hides. He intends to reveal at the perfect time. The longer the concealment, the greater the unveiling. While you waited, you grew in ways unseen. You learned patience that can't be taught in comfort. You learned humility that can't be gained through applause. You learned faith that can't be shaken by silence. Heaven wasn't ignoring you, it was investing in you. The cocoon was your classroom, your armor, and your birthplace all at once. You may not have realized it, but even in your stillness, heaven was moving. Angels were working in unseen places. Opportunities were aligning beyond your awareness. Your isolation was not inactivity, it was incubation. Something inside you was preparing to emerge with strength that cannot be imitated. Think of it like this: when a butterfly tries to escape the cocoon too early, its wings tear. It must struggle. It must press against resistance, because the very pressure gives strength to its wings. That is what your season has been: pressure that built power. You were stretching, strengthening, and solidifying, not dying. There were moments you begged God to release you. You felt ready. But heaven said, "Not yet." And now you see why. There were still soft places in your character that needed hardening through faith. There were still wounds that needed to close before you could fly freely. God loves you too much to release you unfinished. The wait was mercy, not delay. Now, as the cocoon begins to crack, you can sense change in the air. You feel lighter, different, stronger. What once scared you now feels sacred. The silence has turned into peace, and peace into power. Soon, you will spread your wings not to show off, but to glorify the one who hid you long enough to prepare you. When you step out, do not despise the quiet you came from. Carry it with you. Let it remind you that stillness is not weakness, it is wisdom. The same God who hid you will reveal you, but He will always whisper, "Remember where I transformed you." If this word resonates deep in your spirit, acknowledge heaven's timing. Comment 444 below, not as a trend, but as a testimony. Because the number 444 carries the meaning of divine stability. It symbolizes foundation, alignment, and the steady hands of heaven that hold your destiny in perfect balance. When you type it, you are declaring, "I trust the process that is shaping me. I choose patience over panic. I believe the silence is sacred." Let that number be your seal of faith, your way of saying, even here in stillness, I am safe, because soon you will not crawl, you will soar. And when you do, the world will look up in awe, never realizing how long heaven took to build those wings in silence. The pain of being overlooked, this is the wound that cuts the deepest. It is not the kind of pain that shouts. It whispers quietly in the dark, asking, "Why not me?" You watched others get celebrated while your efforts went unseen. You were faithful, yet forgotten. You gave your best, and it seemed to disappear into silence. But heaven saw what others ignored. Every unseen act, Every hidden effort, every moment you chose love when bitterness would have been easier, none of it was wasted. Being overlooked was not evidence of your unworthiness, it was evidence of your protection. God was shielding you from premature praise. The applause you didn't receive saved you from the pride that could have destroyed your purpose. The opportunities that passed by were heaven's way of ensuring your value wouldn't be reduced to visibility. You were being measured not by recognition, but by resilience. In truth, being overlooked was your training in authenticity. You learned to act from conviction, not from the desire to be seen. The silence purified your motives. It revealed whether you were serving for applause or serving for obedience. And through that testing, your heart was refined. The hidden work you did in obscurity will one day speak louder than the noise of those who were celebrated too soon. The Spirit reminds us through the wisdom of Proverbs, chapter 27, verse 21. The crucible for silver and the furnace for gold, but man is tested by the praise he receives. Those words describe your journey perfectly. You were tested not by fame, but by lack of it. God watched how you handled being unseen. He wanted to see whether your faith would remain steady when no one was watching, whether you would still build, still serve, still believe even when unnoticed. That is the mark of the truly chosen consistency without recognition. You see, heaven hides greatness until it is safe. You were being hidden, not to humiliate you, but to protect you from environments that could not honor your calling. There were people who would have used your gift for their gain. There were places that would have celebrated your talent but starved your spirit. God's silence was mercy disguised as neglect. The delay was love in camouflage. In that season of being overlooked, you learned how to be anchored. You stopped chasing validation and started chasing truth. You discovered that approval is fleeting, but purpose is eternal. Every unnoticed sacrifice became an invisible stone in the foundation of your destiny. When no one clapped, heaven recorded it. When no one thanked you, angels witnessed it. You were never unseen by God, and though the pain of obscurity felt heavy, it built a depth that public success cannot replicate. Because when you rise, and you will do so with humility, not hunger for fame. You will value purpose over platform. You will move with quiet strength, knowing that what God reveals at the right time cannot be ignored. The overlooked are the overprepared. You have been trained in shadows, so when light comes, you will not be blinded by it. You have been stripped of illusion, so when the stage appears, you will stand steady, not swayed by noise or flattery. Every hidden year was heaven teaching you emotional balance, how to stay grounded when praise arrives, and how to stay faithful when it leaves. And when God finally places you before people, it will not be for their approval but for His glory. Those who once passed you by will watch in silence as heaven lifts you. But you will not gloat. You will smile with grace, because you'll remember that being unseen taught you to see yourself through God's eyes, not theirs. So, if you are still in that place where no one notices, take comfort. The world's silence does not mean heaven's absence. The applause may be missing, but the anointing remains. Your unseen obedience is speaking volumes in the spiritual realm. Keep doing good, even when it goes unrecognized. Keep sowing, even when no one claps. Keep building, even when it feels pointless. Every unseen act is a brick in your eternal reward. There will come a day when what you carried in secret will be celebrated in the open. The spotlight will find you not because you chased it, but because heaven commands it. You won't have to fight for visibility. Purpose will call your name. Until then, let peace be your companion and humility your crown. What God is building in private will outlast everything done for show. You were not overlooked, You were chosen to be developed quietly. And soon, the same silence that once made you question your worth will become the stage that announces your strength. The shield of delay. What a strange phrase, yet how true it has proven to be in your journey. What you once called stagnation was, in truth, divine insulation. Every delay carried a purpose you could not perceive at the time. The very moments that felt like life had stopped were actually seasons of unseen movement. You were being kept behind a spiritual barrier, guarded by heaven's timing. Delay, though painful, was the invisible armor wrapped around your destiny. God was not ignoring your prayers. He was protecting your promise. Every unanswered petition was being filtered through divine wisdom. He heard you the first time you cried out, but his answer came disguised as waiting. There is safety in slow progress when heaven's hand is steering the journey. The Spirit reminds us in the book of Exodus, chapter 13, verse 17. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though that was shorter. For God said, if they face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. That is the mystery of your path. There was a shorter road, an easier way, but God took you the long way around. You did not miss your miracle. You were being guided away from unnecessary battles. You were spared from wars you didn't know existed. Had He allowed you to move when you wanted to, the weight of that early victory might have crushed your spirit. Delay became your shield. Sometimes heaven protects us by withholding. You asked for open doors, but God saw the fire behind them. You asked for speed, but heaven knew acceleration without preparation is destruction. The shield of delay does not always look like kindness. It often feels like frustration, but it is mercy wearing the mask of patience. You were being hidden while others rushed ahead. You watched them run, achieve, and celebrate, while you were still waiting in silence. Yet in truth, you were the one being preserved. Some of those who sprinted ahead burned out, but you slow, steady, refined are still standing. Your pace was deliberate because heaven was synchronizing your steps with destiny's rhythm. Delay is not God's denial, it is His design. The enemy cannot attack what God has concealed. Your hiddenness became your camouflage. While others were fighting unnecessary wars, you were gaining unseen wisdom. When you thought you were being held back, you were actually being held safe. There were times you questioned your own value. You wondered if God had changed His mind about you. But the shield of delay was proof of His commitment, not His absence. He was building strength inside you that would not break under pressure. He was teaching you the power of endurance, the art of patience, and the wisdom of waiting. Imagine a fruit that ripens too early. It looks beautiful but spoils quickly. That is what premature success does to the soul. God refused to let that happen to you. He let you mature slowly, layer by layer, until your roots could sustain your harvest. The waiting season was your strengthening season. There is a reason heaven doesn't always explain the wait while you are in it. Understanding too early can create pride, but when you emerge, clarity floods in. You begin to see that every closed door was a rerouting, every pause a redirection. Heaven was not blocking you, it was building you. Even the people who walked away were part of this protection. Some connections were removed not out of cruelty, but to preserve your peace. You may have cried over who left, but later you will thank God for the separation. Delay is not just about timing, it is about trimming. Every detour was strategic. Every delay was loving. Every unfulfilled desire was being reshaped into something eternal. You were being guided toward the place where promise meets maturity. The shield of delay didn't stop your progress, it ensured you would last when progress came. Now, as you look back, you can see the hidden pattern every time you thought you were losing. You were actually being positioned. Every time you were paused, heaven was preparing people, places, and paths you couldn't yet see. God was not late. He was on time for your readiness. So walk forward with peace. The delays that once broke your heart were never punishment, they were prophecy. You were not being delayed to be denied. You were being delayed to be delivered. And soon, what once seemed slow will suddenly accelerate, proving that divine timing was never about keeping you behind, but about ensuring you'd be ready when your moment arrived. There comes a moment when heaven finally whispers, "Move." The air feels different, lighter, electric, holy. You sense the shift before you see it. After so many seasons of silence, one divine instruction breaks through the stillness, and suddenly, everything that felt delayed begins to align. The same God who told you to wait now says, "Go." This is the moment when obedience becomes your bridge to destiny. You've learned to move slowly, to listen deeply, to trust fully. That was the purpose of your hidden season, to train your spirit to recognize heaven's timing. The instruction doesn't always come with clarity. It often comes as a quiet nudge, a stirring in your soul. But you know this feeling now. You recognize the difference between impulse and inspiration. Heaven's whisper carries peace, not pressure. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Elijah as recorded in the first book of Kings, chapter 19, verse 12. And after the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. That whisper, soft, subtle, yet powerful, is how heaven moves its chosen ones. It doesn't need thunder to lead you. It needs your willingness to hear. God will never shout over your distractions, which is why He trained you in stillness first. The waiting refined your ear. Now, when the whisper comes, you will not mistake it for noise. This is the transition moment between hiddenness and manifestation. You are stepping from silence into assignment. Everything you endured in the cocoon, the wilderness, the isolation, it all led here. The delay was your foundation. Now comes the divine release. Heaven will give you small instructions at first, just enough to test your readiness. Move gently, faithfully, and watch how doors begin to recognize you. The moment you move with heaven, resistance loses its grip. You will notice that what was once impossible now bends easily to obedience. This is the power of divine timing. When your movement matches heaven's heartbeat, mountains shift and paths appear. The same world that ignored you will now make room for you, because obedience carries a fragrance that opens doors no force can close. Still, be wise. Don't sprint ahead just because the wind is finally blowing in your favor. Move with rhythm, not rush. Every divine instruction carries an appointed step, and your peace will confirm the pace. The whisper that calls you forward will never lead you into chaos, it will lead you into clarity. In this season, you may feel heaven's urgency, but urgency does not mean anxiety. It means alignment. You are standing on holy ground, the border between what was and what will be. The whisper to move is not about speed, it's about surrender. It is your yes that unlocks everything prepared for you. Look back for a moment. Every delay has prepared this step. Every silence has sharpened your senses. Every hidden battle has taught you discernment. You now walk differently, not from desperation, but from direction. The wind you feel behind you is not random, it is heaven breathing on your obedience. There will still be challenges, but you will not face them the same way. You've learned how to listen before you leap. You've learned that faith does not need to see the full map. It just needs to follow the next lighted step. The whisper says, "Move," and your spirit replies, "Yes, Lord." That simple exchange becomes the hinge of destiny. When you move, heaven moves. When you obey, things align. The same gates that once resisted you will swing open because your timing and heaven's will have finally become one. This is not a coincidence, it is orchestration. The very stillness that once confined you now propels you. Pause and breathe. The waiting has matured you, the whisper is your release. It is time to act, not with panic, but with purpose. But heaven is ahead of you, clearing the way, ensuring that every step carries grace. You don't have to force anything, just flow. If this message echoes in your heart, if you feel that sacred nudge rising within your chest, declare it. Comment, "I will move." Because those 3 words are not casual, they are covenant. They mean I choose obedience over fear. I will no longer wait for perfect conditions, I will walk in faith. When you write it, you are marking a spiritual shift the moment your will aligns with heaven's whisper. Each letter becomes a step forward, a quiet yes that tells heaven, "I'm ready for the path you've prepared." The world may not hear it, but the unseen realm does. It recognizes that you have decided to move with purpose, not pressure, with guidance, not guesswork. Let your words be your motion. Say them not just to type, but to testify, because every movement in obedience creates ripples that heaven multiplies. This is your moment to move with heaven's whisper. Step forward, the season of stillness has done its work. The unveiling begins. You can feel it before you see it, the quiet cracking of heaven's seal over your life. The season of silence has served its purpose, and now light begins to touch what was once hidden. You are stepping into visibility, not because you chased attention, but because obedience made you ready. The doors you once knocked on now swing open on their own. This is not coincidence, it is divine choreography. You are being revealed, not as you were, but as who you have become. Every scar now glows as proof of survival. Every tear has turned to oil, anointing you for this very hour. You were not kept in shadows to be forgotten. You were preserved to shine without burning out. The light that surrounds you now is not spotlight, it's stewardship. You are not here to impress. You are here to illuminate. The Spirit declares in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 16, "Let your light so shine before others, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." That light is not performance, it's purpose. You are now walking in the fullness of what was once only whispered. Heaven is unveiling you layer by layer, revealing not just what you can do, but who you have become in the hidden years. You are proof that the delay was not a detour, it was divine design. But listen closely as you step into this brightness. Remember where the oil came from. You are carrying light that was pressed from your pain. You cannot forget the silence that made you strong, or the wilderness that made you wise. The unveiling is not an end, it's a continuation. God reveals what He can now trust to remain humble. And as your light begins to reach others, remember that this journey is not meant to be walked alone. The message that once spoke to you in darkness now becomes a lantern for someone else. So if this word stirs something deep within you, take a moment to respond. Press like if this message feels like a mirror of your own story. That simple gesture is not about numbers, it's a ripple of light telling heaven, "I received this revelation." Share this message if you feel it could guide someone still walking through silence. Think of it as passing a torch in the dark. You never know whose path your light might ignite. And subscribe not as a formality, but as a way of saying, "I want to stay connected to the flow of this light." Every time you return, you are choosing consistency over chaos, peace over noise. Now, if your heart feels moved to give, to pour back into what has poured into you, know that this is a holy choice, not a demand. Imagine it like placing a single candle on a vast altar of light. Each offering, no matter how small, becomes part of the glow that reaches someone else's night. Your giving is not payment, it's participation. When you choose to donate, picture it like watering a tree whose shade you may never sit under. The fruit that grows will nourish someone else, perhaps a soul silently searching for hope, just as you once were. The beauty of giving is that it multiplies without calculation. Heaven measures not the size of the gift, but the sincerity of the heart that releases it. You are not asked to give from pressure, but from peace. The same God who multiplied the loaves and fishes can take your small act and turn it into spiritual nourishment for thousands. Every yes whispered from a willing heart becomes another seed of hope planted across this world. And even if all you do today is listen and breathe, that too is holy. Because the light you carry within you is already part of this divine unveiling. You have become living proof that delay is not denial. It is the preparation of brilliance that endures. When you support, when you share, when you stay connected, you're helping heaven's whisper travel further. You're helping build a sanctuary of words where weary hearts can rest. You're saying, let the light continue. So if this moment resonates, follow what your spirit feels, not obligation but overflow, like share, subscribe, or give. Each action is a petal released into the river of purpose. The current will carry it farther than you can imagine. And as heaven unveils you, may your light illuminate others. May your generosity heal unseen hearts. And may your obedience echo as a melody that calls the hidden ones home. Enemies bewildered by your rise, how strange it must appear to them. The same ones who doubted you now watch in disbelief as grace lifts you to places effort alone could never reach. They remember you by your pain, by your delay, by your silence. Yet heaven knows you by your endurance. What they called failure was formation. What they mocked as stagnation was spiritual construction. You were hidden long enough for transformation to become unrecognizable. When the unveiling began, it was not only your circumstances that changed, it was your nature. The person they once underestimated no longer exists. Every trial rewrote your spirit. Every delay carved strength into your soul. So when elevation came, it did not arrive as shock to heaven, only to those who never believed your silence carried purpose. The Spirit reminds us in the book of Psalms, chapter 23, verse 5, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows." Those words are not vengeance, they are vindication. You do not rise to prove them wrong. You rise to prove God right. The table he sets before you is not built for gloating, but for glory. You are being elevated to display what endurance looks like when faith refuses to break. Your overflowing cup is not arrogance. It's abundance meant to serve others. You see, those who watched you struggle expected you to collapse. The silence confused them. The delay made them assume you were done. They mistook your stillness for defeat, not realizing that stillness was your shield. They whispered, doubted, and dismissed you. But heaven smiled because what they couldn't see was the hidden work happening beneath their gaze. There is a mystery to divine timing when God lifts you. No one can explain how. You won't be able to trace the steps because it wasn't your doing, it was heaven's orchestration. The same people who once pitied you will now witness blessings unfold that cannot be justified by logic. They will say, "How did this happen?" And you will simply answer, "Grace." Their confusion will become your confirmation. Every rumor that tried to bury you will become soil for new growth. Every word spoken against you will be turned into fertilizer for your favor. The very ones who doubted you will become the audience to your restoration, not as punishment, but as revelation. Through you, they will learn that God's silence never means his absence. This is the paradox of your calling. You were never meant to fight your enemies. You were meant to outlast them. Heaven's strategy is endurance, not retaliation. When you rise in quiet dignity. There is no need to defend your name when heaven has already validated your journey. The bewilderment of your enemies is not your concern. It's your testimony. It shows that what was impossible to human eyes was inevitable to divine design. You were always going to rise. The delay was only the cocoon stretching time for your wings. The very things meant to break you built you instead. And in your rise, notice how peace now guards your reactions. You no longer crave vindication, you crave continuation. You no longer wish to prove your worth, you wish to fulfill your work. That is the sign of maturity, when success no longer seeks revenge, but redemption. You will walk past those who once mocked you and bless them silently. Because grace doesn't gloat, grace simply glows. Your light will do the speaking, your presence will do the preaching, and your peace will do the proving. The same mouths that once spoke against you will now speak of you, not with malice, but with awe. You were underestimated because your growth happened underground. But when God decided the time was right, he raised you like a tree planted by living waters, roots deep, branches unbreakable. What they saw as delay was actually depth. What they thought was your ending was the quiet stretch before your beginning. Do not waste time explaining your transformation. Those meant to understand will feel it. Those meant to doubt will serve as witnesses. Your rise will speak the language of grace so clearly that no defense will be needed. Heaven will handle the narrative. Your job is to stay humble and keep glowing. This is the beauty of divine reversal. The story that once caused you shame now becomes the story that releases others from theirs. You rise not just to show victory, but to extend hope. The bewilderment of your enemies becomes the awe of future believers who will say, if God did it for them, he can do it for me. So walk on, steady and silent. Let your elevation be your evidence, and let peace be your crown. You are not rising to be seen, you are rising to be sent. There is a sacred weight resting upon you now, the mantle of the hidden ones. It is not made of cloth or jewels, but of endurance, humility, and wisdom shaped in secret. The world sees your strength, but heaven sees your scars and calls them beautiful. This mantle is not a reward for perfection. It is recognition of perseverance. You remained faithful when no one watched. You obeyed when obedience cost you everything. You stayed even when walking away looked easier. This mantle carries authority, not for control, but for compassion. Those who have walked through hiddenness understand pain differently. You see through people now, not to judge them, but to understand them. Your silence taught you empathy. Your isolation taught you intercession. This is what separates the chosen from the crowd. You carry heaven's heart, not just heaven's hand. The Spirit reminds us in the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7. But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. You are that vessel, cracked, perhaps, but carrying eternal treasure. The world may look at your scars and see fragility. Heaven looks and sees proof that you were trusted with pressure. The cracks are not your disqualification, they are the windows where light escapes. What you carry was formed in the furnace of waiting and wrapped in the oil of patience. The mantle of the hidden ones is not loud, it is luminous. It shines quietly. When you speak, Your words carry weight because they were shaped in the wilderness. When you move, your presence brings peace because you have learned to walk with heaven's rhythm. You do not chase platforms, they begin to find you, drawn by the frequency of authenticity. This mantle also carries responsibility, for you cannot wear it and live as before. You are now a carrier of presence, a walking reminder that God hides his most powerful weapons until the right battle. The world may call you lucky, but you know better. It was never luck, it was preparation. The years of silence were sacred training. Now, heaven trusts you with influence, not to elevate yourself, but to elevate others. You are called to lift, to speak life, to awaken those who still think their delay means denial. You are the one who can walk into a room and say, "I understand," and mean it. Your authority is not built on pride. It is built on pain turned into purpose. This is why your mantle feels heavy. It carries the weight of other people's breakthroughs. Every chosen one becomes a door for others. What you've endured will become the key for someone else's freedom. The same silence that once suffocated you will one day become your song. Do not shrink back now. Do not doubt the timing. You are stepping into a phase where heaven's favor will begin to follow your faithfulness. Things that once resisted you will begin to align with ease, not because they changed, but because you did. You are aligned, and alignment always attracts assignment. The oil on your life will begin to speak in rooms your voice has not yet entered. Your name will travel ahead of you, not through noise, but through grace. That is the signature of heaven. It opens doors quietly, naturally, undeniably. But remember this, your mantle is maintained by humility. Pride leaks anointing, gratitude multiplies it. Stay anchored in the same stillness that once sustained you. Continue to move with tenderness. Your strength is not in shouting, it is in shining. If this message resonates in your spirit, if you can feel the weight of that unseen mantle pressing gently on your shoulders, comment 555 below. Not for superstition, but for symbolism. The number 555 represents divine transition, grace multiplied, favor unfolding, and new assignment awakening. When you type it, you are declaring, "I accept my mantle. I am ready to move with grace into the next dimension of my purpose." Let those digits be your quiet yes to heaven's call. Not an emotional reaction, but a spiritual agreement. You are not just surviving your hidden season, you are stepping out as one chosen, crowned, and commissioned. The mantle of the hidden ones is resting upon you, and as you wear it, you will not just walk in light, you will become it. When you type 555, you are not just echoing numbers, you are affirming transformation. 5 is the number of grace. 555 means grace multiplied, grace to rise, to rebuild, and to release. It marks the moment heaven's favor expands your territory. Each time you see 555, let it remind you transition is not chaos, it's calling. You are no longer waiting for permission, you are walking in purpose. The shift has begun, and grace has already gone ahead to meet you there. The divine reversal, it begins subtly, almost quietly, like dawn breaking through the last layer of night. One day, you wake and realize the tide has turned. The same waters that once threatened to drown you are now carrying you forward. Everything that once felt lost begins to return, not in fragments, but in fullness. This is not coincidence, it is divine compensation. Heaven never takes without intention, and it never restores without increase. For so long, it seemed as if your labor bore no fruit. You sowed kindness, but reaped rejection. You gave loyalty, but received betrayal. You prayed, but heard silence. Yet what you could not see was that your sacrifices were seeds buried deep in sacred soil. Heaven was never ignoring your faith. It was letting the roots grow strong beneath the surface. And now, in this divine reversal, the harvest arrives unexpectedly, abundantly, perfectly timed. The Spirit declares in the book of Joel, chapter 2, verse 25, "I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten." Those words were not written as poetry, but as prophecy, and they are being fulfilled in you. Every season you thought was wasted will now produce double. Every tear that fell in silence has been counted and converted into blessing. What the enemy meant for harm, heaven is turning into healing. Reversal does not mean replacing the past, it means rewriting its outcome. The pain does not vanish, it transforms. The memories remain, but they lose their sting. You begin to see how every detour was direction, every loss a lesson, every wound an opening for light. Heaven does not erase your history, it redeems it. This is how divine justice works. It doesn't simply balance the scales, it tips them in favor of grace. The measure of what's returning to you will not match what was taken, it will exceed it. God's mathematics is multiplication, not replacement. The more you lost, the greater the return, because every loss was layered with purpose. You may not recognize yourself in this new season, and that's because pain changes posture. You no longer walk heavy, you glide with quiet strength. You no longer beg, you believe. You no longer chase, you attract, because divine alignment now flows through every step. The same ground that once resisted you now yields with ease. Where doors were locked, they now open. Where voices were silent, they now call your name with honor. Yet this reversal is not only external, it begins within. The first restoration heaven performs is always on the heart. Before resources return, peace does. Before opportunities open, confidence does. You are being restored from the inside out. The weight you carried has lifted, the fog that clouded your mind is clearing. The same faith that once felt fragile now feels firm. Divine reversal also exposes perspective. You start to understand that waiting was not empty, it was investment. You see that the delay didn't destroy you, it defined you. And with that realization comes gratitude, the kind that humbles you, softens you, and fills you with compassion for those still waiting for their own turn of tide. Do not mistake this grace for coincidence. Every detail was scheduled, every moment accounted for. What feels like sudden blessing was long in the making. Heaven has simply flipped the hourglass, letting what was stored flow into your present. And when it does, it comes in such proportion that you will know this could only be God. In this season, even the smallest things will begin to carry meaning. The right words, the right encounters, the right timing. They will all align as if the universe itself is conspiring for your good. But it is not chance, it is covenant. Heaven is honoring the patience that held you together when nothing made sense. And when restoration comes, remember it is not only for you. Divine reversal flows outward. What heals you will heal others. The favor on your life will feed those who are still hungry for hope. This is the beauty of redemption, it multiplies. You once walked through fire, now you carry warmth. You once cried in silence, now your voice carries comfort. The same story that once brought you pain will now bring others peace. That is how heaven wins, by turning every wound into a well of wisdom, every scar into a story of survival. So rest in this, the divine reversal has begun. The tide that once resisted you now carries you home. You have stepped into a season where loss bows to restoration and delay bows to design. Everything that was withheld is returning redeemed, refined, and multiplied. The kingdom assignment awakens not with thunder or spectacle, but with still conviction rising within your spirit. It begins as a quiet awareness that you were not preserved merely to survive, but to serve. The protection, the delay, the isolation, all of it has shaped you for this moment. You are not who you were when the waiting began. Your heart beats differently now. It beats in rhythm with heaven's heartbeat. Your purpose is no longer a distant dream. It has become a living command. Heaven calls, not through volume, but through vision. And as you listen, you realize the assignment was never about building fame. It was about building faith, both in yourself and in others. Everything that seemed wasted has prepared you to guide those who still wander through the same valleys you once walked. You are not just stepping into destiny. You are becoming a deliverer for others. The Spirit reminds us in the book of Isaiah, chapter 61, verse 1. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because He has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives. Those words are not limited to prophets. They are the inheritance of every chosen one who has endured the wilderness. The oil that came from your pain is now your empowerment. You are being sent not necessarily to stages or nations, but to hearts. Your words will carry weight because they come from wounds. Your compassion will heal because it was birthed from your own scars. This is how the kingdom advances, one healed soul helping another find its way home. For a long time, you thought your purpose had to look grand to be real. But the kingdom doesn't measure impact in numbers, it measures it in obedience. Sometimes your assignment is one conversation that breaks a chain of despair. Sometimes it is one act of forgiveness that changes an entire bloodline. Kingdom work is often quiet, but it echoes for generations. You carry a unique portion of heaven's heart, something no one else can release in the same way. That is why your process was so specific. The wilderness designed your voice. The waiting carved your discernment. The pain trained your perception. Every lesson prepared you to reach people others cannot reach. Your story is the key that fits a lock in someone else's soul. This assignment is not always comfortable. It will stretch you beyond your comfort zone, asking you to speak when silence feels safer, to stand when compromise seems easier. But you were not called to comfort, you were called to impact. You are a bridge between despair and destiny, a living testimony that what was meant to bury you became the foundation beneath your feet. And as the kingdom assignment unfolds, you will notice that provision begins to follow purpose. The resources you once lacked start finding you. The right people appear not because of striving, but because of alignment. Heaven funds what it initiates. When you move with divine direction, doors open naturally, timing aligns effortlessly, and peace becomes the signature of your steps. Still, do not mistake activity for anointing. The kingdom moves through purity, not performance. Your power flows from intimacy with God, not from public attention. Stay rooted in that connection, and you will never run dry. The same voice that called you out of hiding will continue to guide you into deeper waters of influence. In this season, you are no longer only receiving, you are releasing. You are becoming a vessel through which heaven breathes. Every word, every gesture, every prayer carries the echo of your journey. You will speak with authority because you have lived what you preach. And when others see your life, they will not just admire it, they will awaken because of it. The kingdom assignment is not a burden, it is a birth. You are birthing something eternal, something that will outlive applause and outlast adversity. You are stepping into a purpose that carries legacy. Heaven is trusting you with its message, not because you are flawless, but because you are faithful. So walk forward in quiet boldness. The same God who led you through waiting is now walking with you into working. Every step you take now builds something sacred, an invisible structure of light stretching through the earth. You are no longer hidden, not for fame, but for function. You are a carrier of kingdom fire, chosen to ignite hearts that have grown cold. This is your assignment: to live as proof that God restores, to move as evidence that grace transforms, and to speak as one who knows the cost of silence. You have been anointed for this exact moment in time. The kingdom is awakening within you, and through you, heaven touches earth. Heaven touches the final separation. This is the part few speak about, yet every chosen one must face it. When God elevates you, He also filters your surroundings. The same light that reveals your path also exposes what can no longer go with you. This separation is not cruelty, it is clarity. Heaven never subtracts without preparing to multiply. You can feel it, the quiet pulling away, the subtle distance between you and what once felt familiar. People who were pillars in one season begin to drift. Some step back gently, others leave abruptly. It hurts, but deep down, you know this is divine. God is untangling you from what could not carry the weight of your next level. This pruning is not rejection, it is protection, once again in a different form. The Spirit reminds us through the words of Jesus in the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 2. Every branch in me that bears fruit He prunes, that it may bear more fruit. You are that branch, and this pruning, though painful, is purpose in disguise. Heaven is not cutting away life. It is making room for greater life to emerge. There are relationships, habits, and patterns that once helped you grow but now hinder your expansion. Love them, bless them, but release them. Growth demands goodbye. In this stage, solitude returns, but this time it no longer feels like punishment, it feels like peace. You start to realize that the more you rise in calling, the quieter the circle becomes. Divine elevation often requires human reduction. This is the sacred exchange: fewer voices, deeper connection, less noise, more clarity. It's easy to grieve what you lose, but pause and notice what you gain. You now walk lighter, freer, more aligned. The energy once spent holding on to what was is now available for what will be. You are not losing people, you are gaining purity of purpose. This final separation also extends beyond people. God is detaching you from fear, from hesitation, from the need to explain yourself. You no longer need validation from those who cannot see your vision. You have learned that obedience often looks like loneliness before it looks like legacy. And as you release, something beautiful happens. Peace returns in waves. You realize that this letting go is not the end of love, but the beginning of maturity. You start blessing what leaves, knowing that departure does not destroy destiny. Those meant to walk with you will find you again, not through force, but through alignment. When the last pieces of your old life fall away, you will feel an odd calm. That is heaven's signal that the pruning is complete. What remains is pure, holy, and ready. This is the threshold between preparation and purpose fulfilled. Now, if these words touch something deep within you, take a quiet moment to breathe. Press like if your heart recognizes this season. It's not about digital affirmation, it's a whisper to heaven saying, I understand what you're doing. Share this message if it reminds you of someone walking through their own separation. Think of it as releasing a bird from your hand, letting the truth fly where it's needed most. And if this message echoes your story, write it softly below. Leave a comment not to be seen, but to plant your voice among others, like carving your initials on the trunk of a growing tree. And subscribe, not out of routine, but as an act of staying close to the current of this voice, the one that keeps calling you higher, gently but persistently. If gratitude stirs within you, consider adding your light to this flame. Donate if your spirit feels led. Not because you must, but because giving is how we breathe life back into what breathes life into us. Imagine it like placing a stone in a river. Each act of generosity creates ripples that travel farther than you will ever see. Someone on another shore may one day feel that ripple as hope. Everything you do, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, giving is a sacred act of participation, not obligation. It says, I choose to be part of the light that lifted me. You are helping build a bridge of words and warmth where souls once stumbled in darkness. The final separation is never easy, but it always leads to expansion. You are shedding what no longer aligns to make space for what heaven has prepared. So walk on, lighter, freer, brighter. The pruning is proof that the garden of your purpose is ready to bloom, and when new blossoms appear. Remember, the pruning was never to harm you, but to make beauty possible. What once felt like breaking was simply becoming. You are the garden and the gardener, both blooming under heaven's gentle guiding light, crowned in time. Not before. That is the rhythm of divine destiny. Heaven never rushes what it anoints. The crown prepared for you was not withheld. It was being molded to fit the person you were becoming. Timing is heaven's signature of trust. When the moment finally arrives, you will not need to fight for your place. Grace will seat you there. You waited through seasons of obscurity, misunderstanding, and delay, wondering why God would not release what you were promised. But now, as understanding dawns, you see that early promotion would have been premature pressure. A crown placed too soon crushes the head that carries it. God waited for your spine to strengthen, your vision to focus, and your heart to surrender fully before letting the weight of authority rest upon you. The Spirit reminds us in the first letter of Peter, chapter 5, verse 6. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. That verse holds the secret to divine elevation. The hand of God is not only the hand that blesses, it is the hand that holds you down until you are ready to rise. Every season of waiting was not delay, it was calibration. You were being balanced between humility and purpose, trained to carry glory without arrogance. To be crowned in time means understanding that purpose without process is peril. Every great calling must first walk through small beginnings. Before a crown is gold, it is ore. Before it shines, it must endure fire. You were refined, purified, stretched, and shaped so that when the crown finally rests upon your head, it will not slip from instability. There were moments when impatience whispered, "You are falling behind," but heaven was silently smiling. For how can you fall behind when time itself is obeying your preparation? The kingdom operates by appointment, not approximation. The exact moment of your unveiling was written long before you felt ready. Nothing was late, only layered. Your crown is not just a symbol of status, it is a reflection of stewardship. You are not being rewarded for surviving, you are being entrusted to serve. Every lesson learned in the shadows will now sustain you in the spotlight. The authority you carry will not come from titles or applause, but from authenticity, the kind that only endurance can produce. Being crowned in time also means you are being crowned for purpose, not for pride. The authority on your life is not for dominance, but for deliverance. You are not called to rule over people, you are called to lift them. The true weight of your crown is measured not by how high you rise, but by how many you raise with you. And yet this moment of coronation is quiet. Heaven's ceremonies rarely require witnesses. You will notice it not by trumpets, but by transformation. There will be a new calm within you, a fresh clarity in your steps, and an ease in your assignment. That is how heaven crowns a gentle settling of purpose around your shoulders. A peace that says it is time. Those who once doubted will not understand how it happened. You will not need to explain. They will simply see a glow that cannot be manufactured, a grace that cannot be imitated. Because the crown of divine timing carries evidence, wisdom that radiates, humility that anchors, and joy that endures. And when the crown fits, you will notice how light it feels. Not because it lacks weight, but because you have been strengthened to carry it. What once seemed impossible now feels natural, because it belongs to you by covenant, not by conquest. Your story will become proof that divine timing is not delay but design. Heaven does not forget, it fulfills. Every prayer and every tear, every season of waiting was counting down to this unveiling. And now, you wear not just a crown of purpose, but of perspective. You have learned that waiting does not waste, it weaves. So walk in quiet confidence. You do not need to announce your arrival. Your peace will do it for you. You are crowned not before your time, but precisely in it, and that is why it will last. Every crown carried through waiting gleams brighter than one seized in haste. Its gold remembers your prayers. Its jewels reflect your perseverance. Heaven's timing carved each detail with love's precision. Your journey was never about speed but stability. What took years to build will not crumble overnight. You have been crowned with endurance, and endurance never loses its shine. This is the beauty of divine patience, it births lasting glory. You waited well, and now your life speaks softly yet powerfully. I am proof that purpose ripens in perfect time. The revelation of why you were hidden at last. The mystery begins to make sense. All the moments that once seemed random now connect like threads in a divine tapestry. What felt like silence was strategy. What appeared as pause was protection. The waiting, the pruning, the heartbreak, and the obscurity all were parts of heaven's orchestration. Each note necessary to compose your song of purpose. You were hidden not because you were unworthy, but because you were unfinished. Heaven was perfecting the foundation before revealing the structure. The silence was the kiln where your spirit was tempered. The stillness was the womb where your destiny was formed. Had you been unveiled too soon, the weight of calling would have crushed you. But God hid you until strength and humility could dwell together within you. The Spirit declares through the words of Moses in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32, verse 10. He found him in a desert land and in the wasteland, a howling wilderness. He encircled him, he instructed him, he kept him as the apple of his eye. That was you, the one encircled, instructed, and kept. Hidden not in neglect, but in nurture. You were never forgotten, you were being fashioned. Heaven wrapped you in holy obscurity, ensuring that when the light finally touched you, it would not blind you but reveal you. Now, as you look back, clarity replaces confusion. You begin to see that every delay was alignment, every disappointment was redirection. The very roads that felt like detours were the only paths strong enough to bear the weight of your future. Nothing was wasted. Every season carried sacred instruction, even when it arrived disguised as loss. Being hidden was the mark of your preservation. Like a seed buried in soil, you were not being buried to die, you were being buried to multiply. The darkness around you was not punishment, it was preparation. Growth happens underground, in silence, away from eyes that might have misjudged the process. You sprouted quietly, nourished by grace unseen. And now that the revelation unfolds, You understand protection sometimes looks like limitation. You see how rejection saved you, how waiting equipped you, how pain purified you. You understand that God's love is not always gentle, it is often guarding. Every no you received was heaven saying, "Not yet, not there, not them." Hidden seasons are sacred trusts. God only hides what he values. You were concealed because you carry something rare, an anointing that could not be exposed prematurely, like fine wine. You needed time to age in stillness, to deepen in character and flavor. When you emerge, it is not as the same vessel that entered the silence, but as something rich, refined, and ready. Now you can see that being hidden was not an interruption, it was incubation. The caterpillar inside the cocoon is not lost, it is becoming. You too were becoming stronger, softer, wiser. Heaven was writing chapters that could not be read until the right season. The story was not delayed, it was unfolding in divine order. There is a peace that comes when you finally understand. The bitterness of the waiting dissolves into gratitude. You no longer mourn what took time, because you realize that every minute was mercy. The very things that once broke you have now built you. What once silenced you now speaks through you. And so, you stand at the edge of revelation, wearing scars that have turned into symbols. They are no longer signs of defeat, but of design. You survived the silence, and in doing so, you inherited wisdom that cannot be taught, only lived. You now walk with quiet authority, the kind born from intimacy with pain and patience. You know what it costs to wait, and because of that, you carry what cannot be counterfeited authenticity. You have become living proof that divine delay is not denial but deliberate love. The revelation of why you were hidden is this: heaven was protecting the promise from everything not yet ready to receive it, including you. The delay was not to punish you but to prepare you, not to restrain you but to refine you. You were hidden for a holy reason, so that when the unveiling came, it would last. Now you understand the beauty of God's timing. What once felt like loss was actually love disguised as distance. The silence was not God stepping away. It was Him stepping closer in ways you could not perceive. The hiding was never a pause, it was protection written in mercy. And when you finally step into full light, you realize that being hidden was never about staying unseen. It was about becoming unstoppable. And now, your story stands complete, a living testimony carved through silence, endurance, and revelation. You began as one hidden, uncertain, waiting for understanding, and you arrive here steady, luminous, crowned by timing and truth. The delay was never wasted. It became the womb of destiny. You are the evidence that divine protection often disguises itself as pause. As this final word settles in your heart, take a moment to breathe. Let gratitude rise quietly within you, not for what has been gained, but for what has been grown. Every unseen moment mattered. Every quiet act of faith built this foundation. You did not simply survive, you transformed. If this journey spoke to your soul, let that recognition move you gently. Press like not as a habit, but as a whisper to heaven saying, I receive the peace in this ending. Share this message if someone you know still feels trapped in waiting. Think of it as sending a lantern across the nightlight travels farther when it's shared. And if your heart feels words rising, leave a comment below. Let it be your echo, your signature on this moment. Even a single line can become a seed of strength for someone reading after you. Subscribe to stay connected, not for content, but for continuation. You are not following a page. You are walking alongside a story that keeps unfolding your story. Each return is a reminder that faith doesn't finish here. It grows with every word received, And if gratitude moves you deeper, give as you feel led. Imagine it like placing a single candle on an altar of hope. Your light joins countless others, illuminating paths for hearts still hidden. It is not obligation, it is overflow. You have reached the end of this message, but not the end of your becoming. You were hidden for a reason, and now you rise for a purpose. Walk in peace, walk in strength, and let your light remind the world that heaven never wastes a waiting heart.